Welcome to Money on My Mind, hosted by Brennan Schlagbaum, a corporate CPA and founder of Budget Dog Academy. After going from $300,000 in debt to becoming a self-made, debt-free millionaire by age 30, Brennan has helped thousands of people crush debt, grow wealth, and master the art of money management. Discover actionable advice and practical strategies to unlock your own financial freedom. Stay tuned for Money on My Mind and start taking control of your finances in 3, 2, 1.
So my previous life, I worked as a Deloitte auditor, and I was there for 7 years, and I learned so much, and it was such a phenomenal experience right out of school. I even interned there during college, and when I started my career there, I honestly felt like I was lost. I literally felt like I had no idea what was going on. It was such a foreign world to me. You go to school for 20 years plus years or whatever it is. You go to college, you think you're prepared, and all of a sudden you hit the work world and it's like, wow, hold on, this is not what I expected. My accounting 101 professor, Archie Faircloth, I don't even know how to remember that name, did not prepare me for this moment at Deloitte. And so it was a very stressful first year, in fact. And I was on a big public client, Vantiv, now called WorldPay, one of the largest clients in the world. And a lot of this stuff was not only foreign to me, but there was just a whole nother world that I've entered all of a sudden. And, I came from a very humble, very middle-class background. My parents didn't talk about finance. We didn't have fine china, like I'll get to in a second, in our house. We were very normal, everyday people. I had food on my table. My parents were awesome, but we didn't have, I wouldn't say we were affluent, and I think they would laugh at that as well. And so when I got to Deloitte, it was definitely a different culture. You work with a lot of PPMDs, partners, principals, managing directors, that is, and those individuals live a different lifestyle. They're let's just put it this way. I had to try to fit in. And I'm a very raw, real, just say it how it is type of person, typically, as you guys know. And they're very buttoned up. And it was a very tough way to enter the work world. And I just didn't feel like I belonged, to be honest. However, I did end up being there 7 years. And of my starting class, which was crazy, I was able to be the last standing member, which I don't know if that's a good or bad thing, but it was a thing. So we had 24 or 25 people that started in our, rookie class or first year class. And I was there for, like I said, 7 years, and I made manager there. I was on my second year manager when I left, and I was the last standing member. I like to think that that was a good thing, but a lot of people were probably smarter and they left earlier. And, my goal was, I didn't really know what I really ultimately wanted to do at the end of the day. And I saw Budget Dog as a potential thing, and I was doing that for about 2 years when I was at Deloitte, and I looked at it as an opportunity to stay there. I knew my role. I'll get into that story in a second. From year 3 to year 5-ish, 6 or whatever it was, and plus my internship. And so I felt really comfortable of where I was at, and I knew that not only from a comfortability standpoint, but I could take the additional effort and put it towards my business, what I run now. So I get to Deloitte and I meet all these people and I start to be on, the big public teams. And like I said, I didn't fit in. I hated it, in fact, early on, because, you're talking about all these stock-based compensation audit models and all these crazy things and controls. And, you're meeting with all these high-flying people that have been in the business for 20, 30 years as your clients. And you just feel like a rookie and you feel like you just don't know anything. And you're in the right room, but it doesn't feel comfortable because you know nothing. And you're going to learn, and that's what really happened over the last couple of years. And so as I started, putting myself in that culture, I started becoming more, up to date with the way they talk, the lingo, just everything, the culture and all that kind of stuff. And I kind of, went to that direction, and I started fitting into that culture just like the average person does. You're the average of the closest people you're around. And when I grew up, I wasn't like that, but I put myself in that situation, and I grew as a person, grew as a professional, and it was really good. And along the way, I met so many individuals that changed and shaped my life in meaningful ways. Specifically today, I want to talk about my 3 Deloitte mentors, the most impactful people I came across at Deloitte. And like I said, I could talk on, forever on so many different great people I met along the way. But specifically these 3 people, they changed my life, and I'm going to talk about why they changed my life specifically. The first individual was Toy Kavanaugh. And so Toy and I connected when I went from the public realm to the private realm. And my second mentor I'll talk about in a second, Frank, played a big role in that as well. But I had this big transition. After year one at Deloitte, I really just didn't want to be in the public space. I wanted to go to the private space within Deloitte. And, smaller companies, more family-oriented. Like I said, I was fitting into the culture, but I just didn't really like that big public company feel. And so I kind of started having clients in the private space, and I jumped over into the private space. And I'll talk about my second mentor taking me under the wing as well to do that transition. But also Toy. So Toy was my senior at Castellini Companies. And so Bob Castellini owns the Reds. He owns a bunch of companies in the Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky area. And so we had all these small private companies that he owns. Obviously Castellini Companies itself, the produce company, is one company, but he's the owner of the Reds. He did really well. He had the Reds, Sanctuary on Camelback Mountain out in Arizona. He owns a bunch of little companies all over the place, plus the Reds. And so I was on all these various different companies learning in under Toy's wing. But, obviously from a professional standpoint, Toy taught me a lot. But one of the things Toy really, really drove home is the point of investing. And so, as you guys know, I didn't grow up with financial literacy. I did not grow up investing in, in previous podcasts, I talked about the story of how I lost $1 million because I didn't know. And I was earning a lot of money, but I wasn't investing that money. Well, I was going to continue that trend at Deloitte, by the way. This is how fresh I am to the investing world and the financial world, technically speaking. It's been a decade since then. But I really got to Deloitte, and I really didn't think that investing was that big of a priority. That was where my mindset was a decade ago. And when you guys see the success I've had since, a lot of it sparked because of Toy. A lot of it sparked because of Frank, I'll talk about in a second, and Bob. Because these individuals taught me how to think different. And so why I'm so passionate about changing the questions that people ask me, and people ask me what stock do I pick? That's the easy question. That's not going to change the way you think about things. That's not going to be a paradigm shift. When you have somebody that can come in and ask when you learn to ask the right questions, you're going to see such a different side of you, and you're going to transition and transform into such a higher level of yourself. And so Toy not only taught me investing, but she started to teach me how to think about things, in which in turn made me actually question and ask questions in a different way. And so just by purely doing that, I started asking different questions, getting better answers, and getting better results. And that's really what it came down to. But I remember specifically, she told me to invest in my 401k. And I remember I was sitting at Deloitte University in DFW area, which I'm actually at now, which is crazy. It's right by my house. And I was sitting at DFW, and they were updating. We were at one of the beginning, first year trainings or whatever, or second year trainings or whatever it was at the time. And Toy was sitting next to me, and she's like, you need to be investing your money. And they were going through benefits at that point in time. And I was like, I don't make a lot of money, Toy. I only make $50,000 at the time. I was like, I need to save all that money. She's like, if you keep saving that money, there's going to be inflation. You're not going to get anywhere. You're going to continue to work here forever. I'm like, well, that's probably a good idea. So I was really nervous to invest my first dollars, but I decided to. And so I updated my contribution to 6%, which was not a lot, but it was a good starting point, which is the biggest hurdle to get over, is just the confidence to do it. The amounts can do it. You can worry about that later. Don't worry about the amounts. Just do it. And so Toy was able to get me to start investing. I put 6% of a $50,000 paycheck, which worked out to be roughly $115 per paycheck on 26 pay period schedule. But what was happening was a bigger shift in my life at that point in time. Not only did I put $115, a lot of times people minimize the because they look at the dollar amount and they're like, oh, that's not that much. You're changing a habit, a life habit of investing. Sure, now I invest a lot more per month. And now I invest a ton more per month. But if Toy never got me over that mental block to just actually invest my money and to think about a 401k differently, my thought was the 401k, I was taking money away from myself. That's a crazy, crazy thought, but it's also not, because a lot of people feel the same way. And so I was like, well, I'm not going to invest my money because, I can't touch my money, and then I need my money. And so it was a crazy way to think. And now looking back at it, I'm like, oh, wow. I was so broke mindset wise, but I didn't think of it that way at the time. So, when you think of something differently and you don't question things and ask things in a different way, you start to do the same things over and over and over and get stupid results, right? And you're wondering why you can't change and all these types of things, or whatever. So I was all worried I couldn't touch it, and Toy got me over that fear. And that fear of investing changed my life in a major way, to the point where today I'm speaking on this. I'm talking about how I've gotten over that, but not only how I've gotten over that, how I've built insane wealth at a very young age. And I show people all the time, with my roadmap to financial freedom, A Millionaire's Guide to Building Automated Wealth. Like, I built this system that I talk about. Budget Dog Academy, I built this system. And it was all because Toy kick-started me to start. And so when people come to me and they say they want help, and then they panic or freak out, or, like a deer in the headlights look at me, I'm like, listen, I'm going to coach you to get through this, because I know if you get through this, the rest is going to be easy. And a lot of times people don't understand that. Like, they're like, until I can get them past that mental block, the rest is pointless. And so I talk about this stuff with good reason, because I've seen it happen to myself, and I speak about experiences that I've had and overcome, and also thousands of students I've worked with within Budget Dog Academy. And if you guys do want to sign up for a call with my team, you guys feel free to. Obviously, there's a few things I want you guys to consider. You got to make over 100,000 to work with me in the Budget Dog Academy. You have to have both spouses present, and you also have to make sure that you're serious and high intent to get this started. And if you are, 100%, book a call with us. It's a free call with my team to assess if you're a good fit, and you will move forward on that call if that's the case. But you can get that in my show notes below to apply for this position. So anyways, Toy was an awesome piece of the puzzle, right, of my 3 Deloitte mentors. My second Deloitte mentor, which was on the same team, but he was a level up as a PPMD, was Frank Leggio. Now, Frank Leggio, when you think about a smooth-talking criminal, and I don't mean criminal here, but smooth-talking guy, right? Just this awesome, old, wise guy that I just love. I would soak in every ounce of knowledge. Like, he was the most practical, expert, leader type of person you could think of. Like, this slick-back Italian guy just was so smooth in everything he did. I loved Frank, loved Frank. And, he taught me so much. But the biggest thing is, when I went from public within accounting or within Deloitte to private, Frank played a major role in that transition, and he took me under his wing. And so there was a chance that, if that didn't happen, I wouldn't be at Deloitte as long as I was. But because Frank was able to take me under his wing and have a lot of confidence in me and trust me, I was able to stay at Deloitte a lot longer and learn a lot longer under him, and also Toy, and amongst other people. And so I can't thank Frank enough for that. So specifically what Frank told me to do, and this is funny because I think it fits his personality. I mean, that guy could schmooze anybody over at any point in time. He's the smoothest talker, such a good salesman, but also a very ethical, good person. He always taught me to pay to play. He'd be the person at the country club. He'd pay that fee to get in the country club to get access to specific people, to build relationships, to be out in the community, to connect with individuals. And a lot of people don't do that. And I was one of those individuals. I was that broke mindset. It was like, I'm not going to pay for that. That's an expense. Frank didn't look at it like that. Frank looked at everything he spent his money on as an ROI or an investment. And so sure, he had fun. He went to travel and do all those things, I'm sure. And that was technically, somewhat of an expense. It still could be considered an investment. But where he really won, and the reason why he was so successful, was not only because he's a smooth talker, Mr. Frank, but the biggest thing is he was able to pay to play. And he was willing to invest money and see it as an investment for like a country club, for example, to actually get access to people. And I talk about this all the time, is paying to play is a big thing. Getting in the circles that you should be in, because this circle makes you think better, think differently, unlocks you in different ways, gives you connections, gives you resources. It's unbeatable. And that's a mindset shift you have to come to if you want to be wealthy. Because I know early on, and still, for a long time, even at Deloitte, I wouldn't pay for anything. My expenses on a monthly basis were $3,000. And, my wife and I were so cheap. Now, we were able to pay off a lot of debt and all that stuff, but we had a scarcity mindset. We really did. And when Frank made me think of this differently, is the dollar is an exchange of value. And if I'm able to spend money to get return, it always makes sense, even if I'm letting go. But a lot of people have a scarcity mindset and they can't ever let go. And so therefore they never can get ahead. They never can pay to play. And that's a significant piece of the entire puzzle of wealth building. And it's something that I can't explain has made such an impact on my life. I wish I could quantify this for you guys. I really can't, because, how many circles have I paid to play in, or have I delivered value of some sort to get into the certain circles, or I gotten access to something because I, made an investment somewhere. But let me put it this way. I would say it accounts for at least $1 million of my net worth right now, because there are a few things I've done from a paid perspective where I'd pay $25,000 to meet with a team for my business, for example. And that $25,000 spent was, for some people an expense. For me, it was an investment. Sure, could I have lost in that investment? Yeah, in fact, actually I did. And I want to bring that up here because I think it's really important. There was a $25,000 investment. I'm not going to say what it was for, but let's just put it this way. That investment return was $0. And it was involved in a scam of some sort, kind of, long story short. This individual was doing something he was going to do for me, and he's done it for thousands of people, in fact, before me. Unfortunately, there was a shift in the market, and the shift in the market meant he could not perform the services he promised to perform me. So he was going to do it. Everything was good. He was a trusted source. I was, vetted. He was vetted, which is funny now thinking about it, but he was vetted. And once the shift in the market occurred, he couldn't perform on the service. However, this individual decided to recklessly spend all of the money he earned ahead of time, and he had no intention to pay it back because he was going to deliver on the service, and he lived a reckless life. Well, with the shift in the market and the inability to perform services, he had to deliver that money back to me. And let's just say he didn't have that money, and he was broke, no money at all. And this was not just me. This was for a lot of other people doing the same exact service. So I made my mistakes, and I think it's okay to make mistakes, and you're going to take chances. Frank taught me to be bold. He taught me to take action. You're going to make mistakes. If you're so scared to make a mistake, you're going to make the biggest mistake, which is doing nothing. And so when I was able to be bold and I made the $25,000 mistake, I've also made $25,000 successes that turned to millions of dollars. And it's just a matter of figuring out and using your gut and using your intuition to figure out what makes most sense for your situation and to calculate the ROI. But this change in my mindset was crucial for my success. Not only could I, somewhat put a dollar amount on it, but now the more money I earn and the more money I have, the faster I can move, because now I can strategically place capital in different windows or doors or opportunities that open up a lot for me. And so before, I wasn't ever thinking that. I was like, well, I'm just going to go and trade my time for money. That was my thought. I'm going to trade my time for money, make money, and I'm just going to put all of it away. I'm going to save every bit of it. And that was the poorest way to look at it. But that's typically how people operate. And that's human nature. So it's no shame to have that feeling. But that's how I was operating. That's how a lot of people operate. But Frank said you can pay with time or money. Money made a lot more sense because I value my time more. And so it's just understanding the cost versus value breakdown. And Frank taught me that in a big, big way. And that's stuck with me forever. And it's exponentially moved me through my finances. And it's going to continue to do so with time. My third mentor was Bob Bitter. Bob Bitter was one of the most interesting men in the world. Bob Bitter, if you could think of an old wise guy with the handlebar mustache, writing with feather tip pens, this guy was brilliant. He was one of the smartest people. He was one of the most smart people I was ever around. I'm going to put it that way. I met Bob, and Bob was really relatable, though, at the same time, which was awesome. And so Bob was able to connect with me. He loved working out. He knew I worked out all the time, and he really liked to talk about working out and fitness and all that kind of stuff. He was really getting into it. And one thing Bob had that I didn't was wisdom and age and, just that rich feel to him is the best way I could explain it. And funny thing is, he actually grew up very close to me. He was probably about 15 minutes away from where I grew up in Northern Kentucky. But my side of the pond was not the same. And like I've said earlier, I joked earlier in this podcast, is I never said the word China in my house. When I went to Bob's house for an after busy season party, we talked about China, we talked about fine wine, we talked about collecting pens, we had Ferrari imports, we had furniture imports. These are some things we don't talk about in my household growing up. And my wife was over there, and she's in the design world at the time, and she was really impressed. She was like, that's $15,000 chair as he's showing us around the house. And it was a really modest house, to be honest, but he had all this like very expensive stuff in there. And it really opened my mind to a lot of things, but specifically with Bob, he taught me what real wealth was. I grew up real close to him, so it wasn't like we lived real far, and I didn't realize how close I was to wealth at the end of the day. And I think a lot of people are closer to wealth than they actually are led to believe, because they've always been in their little bubble, and they don't realize 15 minutes, south or 15 minutes north, they could meet somebody that could change their life entirely. That was Bob Bitter. And all this was because access to Deloitte, and I had a good grades to be able to get into Deloitte and stuff like that. And technically I paid to play. I went to college, right? Just like anything. And so Bob really taught me how wealthy people think. I remember specifically Sean Keating. Shout out to Sean Keating. He was awesome colleague I worked with for quite some time. And Sean and I were sitting there in the audit room, and Bob gets up on the whiteboard and starts like doodling all this like investment allocation stuff. And investment allocation was like foreign to me at the time. And so he was explaining like international equities versus, and he was saying equities at the time. Like, this is the language he was using. It was just like, common knowledge to him for somebody coming from where I came from wasn't really I might hear the word stock and I might understand that, but like, I wasn't using equities. Like, that just wasn't the common language. And it's obviously quick to pick up on, but like, it's just, it catches you off guard the first time, right? And so he's sitting there doodling on the whiteboard. He has, the international equities, domestic equities, his bond portion, his commodities, like all this different stuff. And he's like explaining why he would do X, Y, and Z. And I was literally sitting there like a deer in the headlights. I was like, what is this guy talking about? But the more we talked about it, the more it made sense. The more I was in that circle, the more often I was in there and talking with those people in that room, I started becoming that person. But if I stayed in the same bubble I was always in, and I never elevated to another room, if I never felt stupid, if I never had I had too big of an ego problem to sit in a room that I was the dumbest person in, I would have never grown. And I still do that to today. Like, most of the time, I am the dumbest person in the room, and I'm okay with that, because I'm learning and I'm benefiting. As long as I can provide some sort of value to those individuals in a different way, I would love to learn something I don't know. And that's exactly what Bob Bitter did. Whether it be at his house, whether, when we did the after busy season parties, or he would host people there, or whether it be going to Keeneland for the week with our client. And I would just talk to him, and just the conversations this guy would have. He was a derivatives specialist, for Christ's sake. He was one of the smartest people at Deloitte at the time. He was making, I want to keep that off the record, but a lot of money. Let's say that. He was top in the game. And just being around that individual shaped my life in a meaningful way. Just the way he talked about things, the way he talked about investing, the reason behind all that stuff, the way he thought about things. And I think a lot of people don't understand the power of just being around somebody that you want to emulate. Somebody you want to be that person, get in their damn circle and stop being scared. Pay to play. Be part of that circle, because you're going to benefit in such a meaningful way if you just get into that circle. And that's what it really taught me. Bob taught me, and Frank taught me, and Toy taught me. And there were so many other mentors and, guiding lights at Deloitte. It was phenomenal to be around people. I want to shout out a few people. I mentioned Sean Keating. He was a huge part of my success, but also Aaron Zaboral. Aaron Zaboral was an individual at Deloitte that he was actually my partner at the time. When Frank kind of was retiring and focused on kind of ascending, Aaron really took that leadership role in the private space at Deloitte, and Aaron led us in an awesome way. He was a young, smart, like just cerebral type of person, like one of the smartest people, made partner very young, respectful, good person, good family guy, but he had a meaningful impact on my life. Kevin Clare as well, I want to shout him out. Kevin Clare was phenomenal. Kevin Clare actually moved into my in-laws neighborhood, so we connected that way as well. And he met my in-laws, and there was a connection there. Was awesome. And Kevin, I think he has 98 cousins in the Kentucky area. I know in Kentucky they joke that you date your cousin, so I hope there's nothing going on there, Kevin. But shout out to Kevin for everything he's been able to do. Just his practical experience and his professionalism of where he allowed me to grow as a person was nothing short of exceptional. So I want to shout out those individuals as well. But the biggest thing behind this whole entire podcast, guys, is getting mentors in your life, people that you can actually get under and learn from. And so I always ask myself, what do I want? Do I want to do real estate? Do I want to do finance? Do I want to do sales? Do I want to do whatever the case is? Do I want to be a professional athlete? If I'm trying to become financially wealthy and I'm working with somebody in my family that's broke, do you think I'm going to become wealthy? Probably not. If I want to get real estate and I'm working with somebody that's never bought real estate, do you think I'm going to get real estate? Probably not. I know this sounds like common sense. Like you would think it's common sense, but it's not. Like the number one thing I look for is somebody that has what I want. And it's not to be jealous at all. It's to learn from them. It's intriguing. It's like, hey, they've achieved 48 doors in real estate. I want 20 doors. I bet they know the pathway and the practical expertise to do so. The roadmap to financial freedom, guys, I am that practical financial expert. I've obviously built my wealth for myself. I've built wealth for thousands of students. If you're trying to become financially wealthy, literally just reach out to me and ask me for help. Like, we can help. I think that's always a funny thing. People follow me for years. They're like, oh, you help with finance? Absolutely. That's what we do every single day. If you're trying to, master the sales game, get into the sales circles, the sales experts, learn from the best, be part of those circles, pay to play like Frank taught me. All of this being said is you get to choose your life. You get to choose the people that you operate with, and you can decide today to change your life. And I think the easiest way to do that is getting in practical expert circles versus theoretical education people. Like, in college, you have that professor that talks at theory, but never really has practical expertise to take action. There's a reason people get success in my programs. There's a reason people get success when they come and work with me with Budget Dog Academy. There's one reason, because I've done it and I've done it on a practical level, and it's not theory. It's just like, if you do this step, you're going to get this result. If you do the second step, you're going to get this result. And if you continue to do this step, you're going to become financially free. It's up to you. I will see you guys next week.
You've been listening to Money on My Mind with your host, Brennan Schlagbaum. If you found value in today's discussion, share it with someone who could benefit from it too. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already, so you never miss a money mastery tip. Until next time, stay passionate about your financial journey and keep taking bold steps towards your money goals.